I'm just okay. We would like to move to our next presenter. So it's Dr. Olga Filippova and Dr. Oleksandra Deineko from Karazin, Kharkiv National University in Ukraine. The topic of research between being home and feeling home, reconciliation perspective of international displaced peoples, persons in Ukraine. Hello and welcome, please, dear Olga and Oleksandra.
Thank you very much, first of all, for this opportunity to participate in this very important conference. And I would like to introduce my colleagues, Dr. Oleksandra Deineko, and we would like to share with you some results of our research, which is a part of larger research on a traumatized border. This research is initiated by University of Eastern Finland, and this is an international project, comparative project of traumatized border. And now we would like to share with you just only a small part of this traumatized border, and we would like to focus on reconciliation and a role of home, of creating new home for in a reconciliation process, new home for internally displaced persons in Ukraine. I will start, and then Oleksandra will continue. We share our duties, our obligations for this presentation. Okay, very shortly, information about reasons of trauma appearing and about Ukrainian context. I suppose I don't have to talk about a lot about this because Dr. Tatiana Kisilova mentioned already this. So our focus is on internally displaced person who moved to controlled Ukrainian territory. And first of all, we would like to underline that since 2014, a new internal border has been formed in Ukraine. Demarcation lane, the internal border between controlled and uncontrolled Donbas territories. And this demarcation line we consider as a hard and traumatic border. And this internal border we view as a constant sociocultural trauma, daily routine divided on before and after. So our focus is on issues of this notion of being home and feeling home. And we would like to analyze these multiple gaps in daily routine term we borrow in Leonid Ionin concepts. Daily routine reconstruction on the new inhabited Ukrainian places faces a lot of challenge. Some key concepts of the study. For us, for our research, these key concepts are trauma, reconciliation is a part of feeling home, border, and new home. So these four concepts, they interlinked, and we would like to see how this new appeared border create trauma and how new home could be healing or drilling trauma. And could be this new home part of reconciliation for IDP persons. Okay, research place and space. Our research we conducted in Kharkiv and Kharkiv region. Kharkiv is one of the biggest city in Ukraine, and one of the biggest city in Ukraine located in the eastern part of Ukraine. So many big numbers of IDP persons, they moved particularly to Kharkiv and to Kharkiv region. Also, the landscape of city has been changed dramatically since 2014. And now we are talking about Kharkiv as a city that is double bordered city, because from the one side we have border with Russian Federation, which create trauma as well, and internal border with the conflict zone. So I use such metaphor for Kharkiv city as a sandwich city which is locked between two borders, two traumatized borders. And in this place and space, we try to see how IDP, how this person, internally displaced person, create their new home being bordered. Some research questions. What factors create obstacles of the way of IDP's reconciliation on controlled part of Ukraine? What are healing and drilling factors? What concept could be used in understanding reconciliation? How traumatized border creates new order of identification for IDP host communities? How traumatized border creates identity in between for internally displaced persons? And are there any ways and sources internally displaced person use not to be stuck in such identity in between? Research methods. We used discourse analysis of official political statements, speeches, policy documents, electronic and printed media, expert statements, posters, photos. And the aim of this discourse analysis, first of all, was to analyze how trauma is presented and maintained on structural level. Interviews and outer biographical narratives of internally displaced persons who moved to Kharkiv and Kharkiv region served for us as individual level analysis, and we focused on trauma, border, home perception, and on home as a part of reconciliation process, reconciliation process. So, in our conceptualization of home, we have two segments: home 1 and home 2. Home 1 being home, which means feeling home. Home as a physical space, home as a social space and such socio-cultural environment. And this is a very important aspect in reconciliation process. Home as a shared memory, home as a space for practice and rituals, home as a cultural attributes, home as an intersubjective world we group formation, also very important part in reconciliation process. So home 1 is home which this internally displaced person left and had. And now they have to create home second or home two. And this is a big mark question. Could this home second or home two be created as home one based on all these aspects which we mentioned? Some hypotheses. Reconciliation perspective is forming both by physical space place and by active role of social groups which are close to home, neighbors, colleagues, friends. So this is environment of neighborhood, of environment of new colleagues, and if it's possible, environment of creating of new friends. I underline this if it's possible, because in many our interviews, internally displaced persons, they mentioned that it's really very difficult to create friendship as they had it before. Why it also will be shown in our analysis of our results in some quotation from our interview. IDPs face multiple obstacles to feel home on controlled territory of Ukraine that make reconciliation perspective less possible. And third hypothesis is reconciliation perspective links with feeling home but not being home. And these ideas about home, as I mentioned in our first hypothesis, home is not only physical space and place, and physical place and space. If we are talking about this aspect of a home, it's maybe more, we can consider this more as a structural level. Well, when government has to propose some physical space and place for internally displaced person. So this is something that depends on structural level as well. The other question is how Ukrainian government deals with such issue. It's really very painful issue. But in our research, we focused more on this other aspect of active role of social groups which are close to home, neighbors, colleagues, friends. So I presented our hypothesis and methods, and I give floor to Oleksandra to continue with our results, please.
Thank you, Olga. And I'm glad to say hello to greatly respected colleagues from all over the world. Let me introduce some results of our research. And actually, I would like to start from presenting our discourse analysis research. And as you may see on these photos, actually the titles of some media notes highlights the problem of discrimination which faces IDPs in Ukraine. And actually, when we can translate one of the examples that for those who are from Donetsk or Lugansk, we do not provide apartment rent. Yes, and actually, this was the hotspot of our discourse analysis, and we need to sum up that actually we found out several spaces of discrimination, and this discrimination we analyze as a trauma-driven factor and some obstacles for IDP's reconciliation, because this discrimination forms some special identity for these groups and creates borders between their and us. Actually, we have noticed that the image of IDPs has changed from 2014 till 2015. During our analysis was conducted, and actually we have noticed the changing of IDP's image from victim to marginal. And this aspect we also positioning as one of the factor of trauma drilling and creating some obstacles for IDP reconciliation. Also, we need to highlight that some results of our analysis of narratives, as Olga had pointed, that we have conducted in-depth interviews. And here we also have noticed some spaces of discrimination that was presented in some notes of our participants of the interviews. And here you can see some presentation that was actually also mentioned during our discourse analysis. Actually, the nomination of IDP in framework of our study, we consider as a trauma-driven factor and an obstacle to be reconciled. Also, we have found out that the line of forming reconciliation obstacles is presented by different understanding of Donbas conflict between IDPs and their renewed social surrounding. So I would like just to read some short notes that presents from our interviews to present this position. We have good relationship with neighbors in a new place. They help, but friendship does not arise. I think it is because the difference in understanding of the situation on Donbas. And actually, here we would like to note that most of our interviewees didn't support the current Ukrainian power or the previous one that exists when the conflicts arise. And most of the neighbors and colleagues they spoke to, they primarily support Ukrainian government, and this is one of the parts they cannot find some common position on. And on the other hand, we also need to mention that the other part of reconciliation obstacle, and here we need to point out that reconciliation is totally lost with the previous social surroundings from uncontrolled territories. And the mentioned part of the interview highlights that actually our interviews do not support the regime which exists now on uncontrolled territories, and on this background they cannot find any common place, any common space of reconciliation with that people who stayed on uncontrolled territory. And it is also because of different views on the situation in conflict zone. And actually, what primarily conclusions we can make based on analysis of narratives. First of all, the innovation of our study is the concept of reconciliation gap. And actually, according to results of our research, we notice that IDPs have traced into this reconciliation gap. And this gap is formed by absence of common view on Donbas conflict between person, their renewed social surrounding from one hand, and previous social surrounding from other hand. And this reconciliation gap actually divides the perception of IDPs home on before war and after it. And that's why here we see the proving of our hypothesis about appearing such called concept of home too, when IDPs declares that they are at home, but on the other hand, they highlight that do not feel home being here on controlled Ukraine during 6 years after they left the conflict zone. And actually, the most visual line of reconciliation obstacle is presented by relation with the neighbors, comparing with friends and colleagues. Actually, this was reviewed during our interviews. Also, we have highlighted several pros and cons factors of reconciliation formation. And the absence of home and physical space makes IDP's reconciliation gap deeper. And here I would also to point that we see reconciliation not in some physical conditions, yes, but still we have noticed that the ownership of property actually triggers the feeling of being reconciled. And on contrary, social activism and effective strategy of self-realization contributes to IDP's reconciliation gap shortening. We cannot say about that it disappears, and because we have mentioned this reconciliation gap in all of the interviews, in all our interviews, but still we can say about different deep of it, yes. And for those interviewers who have active social position, have effective strategy of self-realization, this gap becomes shorter. And also it's necessary to point that reconciliation gap indicator is dividing social surroundings, colleagues and friends on those who also came from there and who is here. What is it about? It is about that actually those interviewers who can shorten their reconciliation gap, they demonstrate that they do not divide their friends or colleagues on renewed territory, and they do not feel themselves so deep as IDPs. Also working out the totals, we would like to share with you some obstacles that according to our point of view, they making this difference between being home and feeling home. First of all, it's the absence of physical space, and it also triggers deepening of reconciliation gap. The second one is the necessity to create new social and cultural nets, that the absence of which we positioning as the obstacles to be reconciled. Also, during our study, we have mentioned that home is a specific space of shared memory, and absence of family material evidence of memory and the need to fulfill family memory also is a great factor. The next one, please. Thank you. And actually, home is a space of practices and rituals, preserve all and creates new one. Home as a cultural attribute is implemented partially, mostly through food traditional family rituals. Visibility of cultural attributes is limited by rules of accommodation owner, and it also influences the feeling of being reconciled. Also, we position home as intersubjective world, which creates the feeling of we group and family and also neighbors in this aspect is divided by members different location, and also influence on the perspective of creating the group as a factor of being reconciled. The next one, please. And our general conclusions from the study. Actually, we argue that concepts of home, border, and trauma can serve as one of the key elements in comprehending reconciliation process. And as our research has shown, reconciliation perspective of IDPs is quite vague. Discrimination image of IDPs in the Ukrainian society and different interpretations of Donbas conflict developed by EDPs, Ukrainians on control and uncontrolled territories, form obstacles on the way of reconciliation. And IDPs have traced into such called reconciliation gap, that is a kind of liminality that is hard to overcome without actually a dialogue practice perspective, both on institutional and individual level. So we would like also to highlight the necessity of dialogue perspective that was presented in our study. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dear Dr. Filippova and Oleksandra Deineko. Please, if everyone have some questions to this presentation. Okay, so I think it was very deep research. Yes.
So much, very, very interesting research you did, and I think the topic of reconciliation and refugee studies is full of opportunities and of interesting perspective if you combine both together. And I already looked into this, and I never came across to somebody who made a research like you did. I find it very, very interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, Tatiana, thank you for your questions. Unfortunately, I was not able to start to join conference at the beginning because I have my classes at that time. But I was lucky to listen to Tatiana presentation, majority of your presentation, and I'm really thankful for very great your ideas about reconciliation dialogue, which is really in big need in Ukraine, and your view regarding some aspects of this reconciliation dialogue. And I feel I found many links between your job, your work on the reconciliation dialogue, and our data we received in our interviews. Okay, now your question. I am sorry for for this note.
Yeah, thank you so much. I basically wanted to tell the same. I'm so happy we are connected. It's sometimes interesting how Ukrainians get connected through internationals. We live in the same country, but it's difficult to connect inside Ukraine. I hope we have more links. I have two comments. Comment number one, indeed, the research that you did seems very, very unique. And the psychological and internal aspects of IDP's adaptation to new reality, this is precious knowledge to dialogue facilitators. And I hope that we'll be able to channel results of your research to practitioners, So basically, we have people, we have NGO activists who are trained in dialogue facilitation, and they come to local hromada in Pokrovsk, in Severodonetsk, or anywhere in the east, and they have to work with IDPs. And the knowledge that your research provides is really precious for them. So we should educate our dialogue facilitators more in psychology and in about findings of your research. That's one point. And the other point is in terms of your findings. We can discuss more, but I find it interesting the way how you framed your reconciliation gap. As I understand, I may be wrong, but as I understand from your presentation, you think that the absence of common understanding of the conflict makes an obstacle to reconciliation. Yeah, that's true in some sense. There are a lot of different conceptions of the conflict, starting from the fact who are the sides of the conflict, right? Yeah, but if you look at this from the conflict resolution perspective, how it can be different. In each single conflict, you take Arab-Israeli conflict, you take conflict at Balkans, Nagorno-Karabakh happening now. That's the major problems when the narratives of the conflict are so different that they contradict each other. And it's not the obstacle, but in terms of conflict resolution, it's opportunity. And dialogic perspective on this, the way how we work and teach our dialogue facilitators is recognition. Unless we recognize that there are different narratives and understandings of the conflict, we cannot reconcile, we cannot move any further. So perhaps enlarging a bit the context of your findings and putting it as an opportunity rather than obstacle, maybe another way looking at it.
Mm-hmm. Tatiana, thank you very much. You're exactly right, actually, and that is why one of our conclusions is to organizing some dialogue perspective, because actually we have noticed that in all of our interviews, all of the participants do not demonstrate the ability to recognize another side. And that is why maybe they are own creating this reconciliation gap, because they cannot recognize the other position. And that's why actually dialogue is some way of working with this problem. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And I would like to add a little bit more. I absolutely agree with these notes made by Tatiana Kiselova, and yes, it could be an opportunity, but this is not regarded. This is not considered as an opportunity in these mass perceptions. So it should be some particular work to show this opportunity, to see this as opportunity. And probably on the practical level, it could be some of this next step to bring these ideas to people about opportunity. And also I agree with recognition. This is a key reconciliation process. Unfortunately, in Ukraine, even among, Tatiana mentioned in her presentation this division between NGOs, But I also can add that there is divisions inside of researchers in Ukraine who have different views on this issue. And researchers, we have to admit that researchers are divided as well by this perception, how to deal and how, what definition we have to use regarding particular groups of people and so on. There are a lot of different grounds for this division among researchers. So unfortunately in Ukraine, we don't see now this movement for recognition, but we see a lot of way to push some particular view, but not recognize multiple views. And this is also a big problem for Ukrainian society to develop this reconciliation process. I don't know if I was clear in my thoughts now.
Yeah, just small thing to add. I agree with what you're saying, but I also see a kind of optimism. For example, there is a great study by United Nations score index of social cohesion. And they really found this group of people. These are just, you know, average citizen, as we said. They exist and they're increasing. They are people with more inclusive identity, people who accept and recognize differences and diversity. And there is a positive dynamic. It's not hopeless. We have these people among average citizens, but we also have these people in civil society. I estimate we have around maybe 3%, 3 to 5% of civil society who are working towards inclusive narrative of the conflict. And also among researchers, we might be minority, but there is a hope.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it was probably a very interesting topic and very interesting discussion. And what was surprising me that I'm finding that people are from depressed, from ordinary people are looking ways to reconcile. And when you see the sides probably of government, of the media, you see different picture, because now you really see people are talking on reconciliation, and the things looks different. It's wonderful to see that and to feel that. I more feel that, because I thought in the beginning the discussion will be in other direction, but it's open, very open direction, and I see, and it's great. It's great for me and for our guests. So thank you very much. I would like to invite our next presenter. Is from our Vienna Center for Reconciliation Studies, postdoctoral researcher, Dr. Luis Pena. In his topic of his presentation, you can take my place. It's okay. His topic as presentation, multi-layered conflicts and reconciliation challenges, reflecting from a Colombian case. Please, Dr. Pena.
Thank you, Benjamin and Francesca Martin, for inviting me. I was a little bit afraid.
I think you need to share. No,
okay.
You can share.
And I was afraid that we maybe not have some common points to share, and maybe you see me as an intruder in a conference on Ukraine, but was precisely the last presentation one interesting point for sharing experiences, let me see let me make something here. Yes. Okay. Share. This is
yeah, because this is your
Okay, let me start by this. Okay. So, as I was telling you, there is an interesting connection between the Ukrainian case and all the cases that we are studying here in the Jena Center for Reconciliation. And one is precisely this of the spatiality of the reconciliation. And I want to reflect on this. I want to present you the Colombian case, but as you will notice, there is many connections, and those connections are also opportunities to share not just knowledge about the violence, also to know how the people are innovating locally to promote reconciliation. And my presentation was organized in, so to say, in an Aristotelian way. I put 5 questions to explain the Colombian conflict and to reflect on the reconciliation challenges. And I would like to start by showing you Colombia. This is for you. Colombia is a South American country in the corner of South America. The border countries are Venezuela, Ecuador, Brazil, Peru, Panama, and with 2 coasts in one in the Pacific Ocean and the Caribbean Sea. And these maps are showing something that I will tell you. These are the places where are located the new groups, dissidents of the peace agreement. I want to tell you. This is just some maps. For example, this map with the red colors shows one dramatic case that is the matter of social leaders that are defending the peace agreements. But as I told you, I would like to talk with you about what is happening in Colombia, and with the hope that reflecting on this, we can find some interesting links of research. That is something in which the GCRS is very engaged, is to work on transdisciplinary studies, but also in comparative studies. So what is happening now in Colombia? There is very complex. You know, we are in a moment after this signature of a peace agreement between the guerrilla, the FARC, the revolutionary armed forces of Colombia with the state. And now this is the context in which is happening 5, 6 dynamics that are combined, that are contradictory. The first, that there is a huge manifestations or demonstrations that combines the defense of this peace agreement that's mentioned on are directly addressed to the model, to criticize the model, the economic model is the extractive and neoliberal one. The denunciation of police and army brutality. In this context also, what is happening now in Colombia is also the murder or social leaders and massacres of young people For example, since 2016, when the peace agreement was signed, there is a very sad number of 750 leaders murdered for different groups. In Colombia, after the signature of the peace agreement, there are many groups disputing the areas formerly controlled by the FARC, by the guerrilla. And in this context has been also difficult the implementation of peace agreements. There's risk, of course, the achievements made and the trust in the agreement. And there is 100 of local reconciliation initiatives that are not understood by the rest of the society. This is probably one of the things that could be very clear connected with the previous presentation, because these initiatives are the main actors are displaced people. And we are reflecting on what means, what is the content of this initiatives of reconciliation and peace agreement on peace building locally. And we have found, for example, that people mobilize a geographical imagination, mobilize moral imagination that is translated in projects to redefine the relation with nature, to create a new landscape, to create a new territoriality, and to create a new everyday spatiality and a new sense of place. So for me, it was very interesting for the last presentation, because there is an interesting dynamic that we can share, and we can start to research together. And also one element is Colombia is a very divided society around the sense of peace agreement. So there are the half of the people are defending the agreement, and the other half is against the peace agreement. And I will show you why. And as I told you, I'm going to make 5 questions to explain why this context. The first question is, first, why? Why the violence has increased at the same time that the demonstrations in favor of peace agreements also has increased. The violence has increased because the right-wing government now is not supporting the implementations, and this has resulted in the deterioration of the security. Basically, the right-wing government sees the agreement as a handling over the state to the international communism. So in the current context, you can see Colombia as one of the places in the world where in certain way the Cold War has not ended, because many of the political controversies are mediated for this narrative of the existence of conspirations between capitalist and communist forces. Of course, the narrative has included other elements that I cannot develop now. The violence has increased also because there are many armed structures in disputes. For example, the FARC dissidences are counted 23 groups, among which there are disputes. There are not a single group. There are also guerrillas that has not signed any peace agreements. There are drug traffickers structures. There are also Mexican drug traffickers, and also offices of hitmen, that is the name that receive these organizations that sells their service of violence to impose the project of different actors, and are actors that they have no a specific political point of view. They are just servicing to different proposals. The guerrilla proposals, the narco, the paramilitary groups, the landowners, etc. The analysis count 12 different groups combating or disputing the different areas of the country. Of course, the state has not developed a strategy to contain the territorial struggles between these different actors, and there is no strategy to control the illegal economies. And when we talk about the illegal economies, we are not talking just about drug trafficking. We are talking about mining, illegal mining. We're talking about the traffic of people, and the analysis also count around 31 illegal economies regulated violently in the whole territory. The murders has been committed against social leaders who were visible heads of the land restitution. The land restitution is a key point of the peace agreements, and leaders that represent that are visible of the alternative political parties, and that support the implementation of the agreement. And this war, these murders of social leaders can be described as a war of the local elites, the ranchers, landowners, drug traffickers, against the economic and political transformation that peace agreements opens. And the demonstration in support of peace process is because a high proportion of people understand that the armed conflict is based on inequalities, social exclusion. Many of them understand that this inequality comes from the economic model, the neoliberal one, the neoliberal extractivist model, the political exclusion, and the penetration of mafias in the state. So, second question, second why. Take some time. The second why, what explained the existence of so many providers of violence in Colombia and the existence of peace initiatives? The Peace Accords is one of the most comprehensive in the history of peace accords in the world. It's a process of reform that include a lot of reforms, and is different to the agreement signed in the past in Colombia and also in other contexts. And you can see this peace agreement of the 2016 as a political act of reconciliation between a sector of the elite, the urban, liberal, the bourgeois elite, with peace in indigenous and Black communities. And there is a social debt that I will mention later, with the land reform. And in certain way, this peace agreement is a way to reconcile, but it's not a reconciliation of the whole society, it's the reconciliation of a part of the elite. And the social leaders that has been model for these groups are peasants, Black communities, indigenous communities, and they are part of a long history of struggles for the right to the land and the cultural recognition. And the existence of so many armed groups is part of the atomization of the drug cartels, the paramilitaries, and different mafia organizations. We are returning in the time. Every question is one returning in the time. When we talk about the moment now is the atomization of drug cartels. Maybe you have for different series an idea of who was Pablo Escobar and what was the Medellin and Cali cartel. They were the mafia structures in the 90s, but these structures were atomized when the cartels, the head of the capos of these cartels were liquidated for the U.S. Government and the Colombian police, and this doesn't end the drug trafficking that widespread the leading, and instead of having big cartels in Colombia start to operate little cartels. And this combination, the combination occur in the context of a political and economic reform. The reforms in the 1990s, there was a constitutional reform that was very interesting because opened the political landscape in Colombia, gave participation to many actors that used to be excluded. At the same time, permitted the implementation of the neoliberal model of development, and also permitted to constitute a very active social society. Third, why to interpret the peace agreement as a process of political reconciliation and a source of conflicting among blocks of power in Colombia. So, as I told you, the peace agreements of the 2016 can be read as an act of political reconciliation. And you have we have to talk about the existence of two blocks of power in Colombia. One is the liberal, urban, bourgeois block of power, and other is the landlord's conservative block of power. I'm not talking about the social movements. They are not block of powers. I'm using the concept of block of powers more from Gramsci. I don't have time to enter into this to describe this concept. In 2016, peace agreements represent the recognition that the armed conflict is the product of a political and economic exclusion. The peace agreement seeks to repair the political exclusion caused by the National Front. The National Front was a way to finalize a civil war after the assassination of a liberal leader, Jorge Eliezer Gaitan, and the elites, liberal and conservatives, decided to share the power and exclude other forces, social democratic forces.